program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the Eau Claire Area School Board. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 F.
Good evening, everyone. I believe we're all here, so I will call the meeting of the ECASD School Board to order. Made, are we in compliance with open meetings law notifications?
Yes.
Thank you. If we could have a roll call for the quorum.
Commissioner Clements,
Present.
Commissioner Harder,
Here.
Commissioner Lyons, Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Nordine,
Here.
Commissioner Torres,
Here.
Commissioner Bika.
Here.
Thank you. Those of you who are able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we do every meeting, we will start off with the public forum. Each speaker will be allowed up to 4 minutes to address the board. The school board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor any person connected with the school system in a public forum. Tonight, we have one person signed up to comment. That person is Zach Hirschman. If you could please give your address for the record, and then you'll have 4 minutes.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Awesome. I'm at 210 Gilbert Avenue here in the 3rd Ward. My name is Zach Hirschman, and I just wanted to say thank you guys for transitioning with the technology. Thank you for serving in public service for our district. Times are crazy, and to be able to see local officials in action. A little about myself, I'm a former teacher and a current parent in the district, and I'm hoping to get more involved. I think that school in general is facing, a immediate crisis point, but also an opportunity to grow into the 21st century. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys move and adjust and keep improving things and making progress into the future. Thank you. I can yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. That's all the speakers we had for public forum tonight, so we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I have a review of the upcoming events for the school board. All of these meetings are virtual meetings. May 19th is a meeting of the Eau Claire Virtual School Governance Board, and that is at 4:30. On May 21st at 4:30, there's a meeting of Demographic Trends and Facility Planning Committee. And on June 1st at 7 p.m., there is a meeting of the regular school board. Tonight, I'd like to recognize Katie Myers. She's an teacher at Flynn and Lakeshore Elementaries. Katie earned her national board certification this school year, which is a significant achievement, as you know. Multiple studies have shown that national board certified teachers learn more and have a greater impact on low-income students. We're very proud to have the 3rd largest percentage of national board certified teachers of any district in Wisconsin, and we're very proud tonight to congratulate Katie for her hard work in earning this certification. So congratulations, Katie. We're also excited that North High School is part of a partnership program with Global Finishing Solutions. Global Finishing Solutions has been an outstanding partner, and as a result, North High School students will have the opportunity to learn and gain real-life experience spraying in a safe environment and in a high-quality paint booth from a local manufacturer. There will be an official ribbon cutting ceremony in the fall where we will further recognize this partnership program and thank those who are involved. We do appreciate this donation. It is a significant improvement in that program at North High School. And North High School will also celebrate a virtual graduation ceremony on May 28th. And Memorial High School will hold a virtual graduation ceremony on May 29th. Details for accessing both ceremonies will be shared with families this week, and we hope that all seniors and their families can join in this very special event. This is a very strange time we're living in, and I'm sure that none of the graduates, nor their teachers, nor their families expected not to have an in-person graduation. But we do hope to hold an in-person ceremony at a later date and as permitted by the Badger Bounce Back program. So after the employment report, I will have one more announcement, but thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. We'll move on to the board president's report, and I will try to keep it quick tonight as we have a fairly packed agenda. But I'll take this moment now to jump ahead a little bit and thank our 13 applicants who have stepped forward to fill the seat left vacant by Commissioner Klinkhammer. It's heartening to see such strong interest in supporting the district and working to keep us educating great students. And while we can only choose one of you tonight, your willingness to serve is really appreciated. I will remind you, and of course anyone that is watching or listening, that we are also currently accepting applications to fill Dr. Torres' seat. As you'll remember, he announced his upcoming resignation from the board at our last meeting. Information about the process is available at the district website, ecasd.us, and applications for that selection are due May 27th. And lastly, this is our final board meeting with our esteemed colleague, Dr. Eric Torres. I know we talked about it a little last week, but I wanted to reiterate, Eric, just how much we'll miss you and the example of leadership and service that you've provided to this district and this community. So we, once again, just wish you and your family the best in your new adventure in Texas. So thank you. We'll move on now to our student representatives report.
Mr. President.
Oh, yes, Dr. Torres.
With your permission, I'd like to make a statement.
I would be happy for you to do so. If I assume that Morgan will also be happy for you to step in front of her.
I'm sorry, Morgan. As you know, tonight is my last meeting as member of the school board. And it has been a great honor and a pleasure to serve you. I would like to make a statement and highlight a few important things that I would like to be on the record. So the first one is that as a member of the school board and during my time serving as president, I have always understood that one of the most important relationships to nurture is the one with the superintendent. Not only because it secures the possibility of meeting our shared goals in benefit of our students, but because it helps to create the most inviting working environment. We model how to do business. Dr. Hardebeck has met this belief with an appreciation and acceptance of the expertise, capacities, and aspirations that all members of the board over the years have brought to the table. Dr. Hardebeck has consistently impressed me with her willingness to listen to ideas, her ability to fine-tune them and champion a cause, and her courage and creativity to implement learning opportunities for students. Dr. Hardebeck has always exhibited a positive working relationship with board members, parents, and staff. She is an educational leader who is up to date with current research and trends in education and leads her administrative team to model and implement new instructional strategies that have certainly improved student learning in our district. Dr. Hardebeck is a visionary leader who not only was able to articulate efforts in an efficient way, but strong enough to infuse the implementation process with an inspiring energy to turn ideas into realities. In the past couple of years, I have especially witnessed her determination to improving student learning through professional development in culturally relevant pedagogy and reading science for all staff. I know how much she has cared. Dr. Hardwick's leadership and clear direction has led to the continued progression and improvement of all students learning in our district. And her passion for improving educational opportunities for students has been nationally recognized in multiple instances, such as when the National School Boards Association highlighted our district's approach to pre-K programming and partnerships with 21 private community sites to educate 4-year-old children citywide, or when Newsweek and the Washington Post named Memorial High School as one of the top high schools in America, or when the U.S. Department of Education awarded its prestigious Blue Ribbon School of Excellence for closing the gap to one of our district's 13 elementary schools, or when Eau Claire District appeared on the College Board's Advanced Placement Honor Roll 4 times in the last 6 years, or when our district was recognized by district administrator for developing family-friendly summer school programs that remove barriers and promote access to summer programming for all students, or when our district is a 3-time winner of the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association Award, which honored the district for its communication with families and the community about programming, school operations, and its 2016 referendum. As an innovative leader, Dr. Hardebeck has implemented new procedures and processes to meet student needs. An avid learner herself, she has involved her administrative team in learning opportunities, encouraged additional professional development opportunities throughout the year, and clearly modeled how a learning community is supposed to work. She continues to push the school district to be on the cutting edge, providing it with the resources and support to accomplish its goals. Through her efforts to recruit and maintain highly qualified teachers, a new compensation plan was adopted, assuring every employee with a satisfactory evaluation and at least 6 months of employment an average of 2% raise each year. Additionally, an on-site medical clinic was developed to reduce out-of-pocket medical expenses for all insured employees and their families. As I observed her managerial style, it became apparent that she has the ability to drive to bring educational change through collaborative and servant leadership. Also unique to Dr. Hardebeck's professional performance are the many positive relationships she has developed in the community of Eau Claire, the state of Wisconsin, and the Midwest region with fellow school leaders, policymakers, and business leaders. Her personal network of educational leaders across the country is also well documented, and she uses these relationships to build a stronger educational team as she continues to nurture that network to bring her administrative team as much assistance from these relationships as possible. Dr. Hardebeck has been a hardworking, dedicated professional, and is a spokesperson for our district, the community, and the broader educational profession. She has communicated with ease and with a sophisticated style. She has brought integrity, critical thinking, creativity, and a vision for the future. Our district would neither be what it is, nor have the potential to become what it will without her touch. Thanks to her leadership, partnership with community and higher education institutions have increased and strengthened, resulting in over approximately $1.75 million in tuition savings for families each year since 2017. In addition to AP courses, transcripted courses and degree programs like business management with CBTC, for example, career programs like welding and medical assistant have been added to the curriculum, and other special programs such as Project Lead the Way for engineering, Spanish dual immersion, Acres for Joy, a music suit program for at-risk middle schoolers, and Project Search for special education students have significantly contributed to expand quality learning opportunities for all our students. Dr. Hardebeck has been a champion of school finance equity. I would like to highlight that for the first time in more than 10 years of deficit spending, the district's fund balance has been successfully restored to levels which have advanced the district's credit rating from negative to stable. More importantly, though, in the process, no one lost their position, as under previous administrations, during the changes that were made to balance or reduce the budget. This change has had an immediate effect in the community, in the business community, of restoring confidence in the district's ability to manage and cope with the inequities in Wisconsin's school funding model. Dr. Hardebeck understands the diversity and needs that exist in our community. Because of her strong belief in equity, diversity, and inclusion, she has promoted a model alternative to the traditional building budget allocation process based on a standard per pupil amount, paying attention to the particular needs housed in each building. Thanks to her leadership, the district has more systems in place that promote cohesion and accountability around employee conduct and responsibility for student performance, with both the way in which educator effectiveness has been implemented and the feedback from support staff evaluations. She has had the gifted ability to project her educational leadership to the larger community. There is no better example of this than her operational referendum, which was passed in 2016. This referendum helped us address 25 years of deferred maintenance to Eau Claire District facilities, enhance the district's technology infrastructure, safety and security, and adopt a competitive compensation package for all employees. Finally, I would like to say that Dr. Hardebeck has always carried herself with humility and dignity, contributing an authentic and thoughtful voice that continuously has advocated for justice. As the first female superintendent in our district history and the first superintendent to have a long teaching career at all levels, she has been recognized as the first superintendent to regularly visit schools to meet staff and leadership teams to discuss and get their take on hot topics. Throughout these years, as a trailblazer, Dr. Hardebeck has been the consummate professional, manifesting a calm and cordial demeanor at all times, yet courageously persevering in her pursuit of a good quality, equitable, and culturally relevant education, all the while maintaining an assured strength of principle and commitment to the core values that make our district a safe and brave learning environment. For all these, I would like to express our most profound and sincere gratitude, Dr. Hardebeck. Now, as I prepare to leave Eau Claire to take on new challenges and enjoy warmer weather, I would like to briefly highlight 4 of several ongoing projects in which, together with many others, and to whom I express my sincere gratitude, I have invested my whole heart during the last 3 years. I do it because I think they represent important structural changes that our district needed to make in order to fulfill its mission and meet its goals. They were not easy to make. First, the dual immersion program has affirmed the long overdue need to respond to the changing demographics of our community and the need to affirm its enriching diversity. As a first-generation multilingual immigrant myself, I foresee a very successful program being expanded to multiple buildings and attracting diverse multicultural families, as well as more highly qualified, culturally relevant, multilingual, and pluricultural educators in benefit of all our students. I also foresee the implementation of foreign languages curriculum as early as elementary school for all students, so that they grow with important communicational and intercultural tools that will contribute to their success as well informed, thorough, thoughtful, and interconnected citizens of the world. I celebrate Brianna Smith's leadership in this area. Second, the Emerging Global Education Achievement Certificate Program will affirm the long overdue need to respond to the challenges of a globalized society and the need to help our students develop critical global learning skills and dispositions that help them understand diverse social group perspectives on events, movements, and ideas across time and around the globe. As a global citizen myself, I think it is important to determine to what extent our students understand the impact of dominant assumptions upon social construction of their own identities at a global scale, and to what extent do they understand the systems of privilege and oppression within global structures that their place and their place and participation in them. I foresee the implementation of the International Baccalaureate program for all our students beginning in elementary school. It is imperative that our citizens grow knowing that their individual and collective decisions have global implications. I celebrate Drew Sidland's leadership in this area. Third, the revised structural design for the learning environments and partnerships committee will debunk the false notion that innovation in education can only come from outside private sources. The revised structure carefully weaves the ability of teachers to identify the needs of students, the strategic leadership of their principals, and their flexible, deliberate, concerted action to address those needs with innovative approaches designed by our own public school teachers and duly connected to each school improvement plan. As a critical pedagogue myself, I think it is important that our own institutional structure opens up spaces and grants decision-making power to the ones who know our students the best, our dedicated teachers. I celebrate Lori Klinghammer and Kim Collar's leadership in this area. Finally, the revised Memorandum of Understanding with the Eau Claire Police Department will affirm the long overdue need to address structural barriers that prevent the academic success of students of color and challenge disciplinary practices in our buildings that are informed by implicit bias. After a year of objective data collection, school leadership, teachers, and staff will soon begin to analyze the impact of a hidden curriculum. As a person of color myself, the first one to ever preside over this Board of Education since it was established in 1889, I think it is important to continue investing time, resources, and effort in our goal to provide a safe, brave, good quality, inclusive, and equitable learning environment for all. Yesterday, we celebrated the 66th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. Let's make it fully happen in town. I celebrate Jim Schmidt and Marianne Hardovet's leadership in this area. There are several other important projects in which I would have liked to continue participating, like our efforts to become energy self-sufficient by 2050 and generating a community at large conversation about the bias in us through hosting a Smithsonian exhibit for the Midwest region, honor and privilege recently given to us as a district for 2021. But the time is tired and we still have an agenda to complete tonight. So I will stop here and drop the mic. To all of you, my everlasting gratitude.
Thank you, Dr. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll now give Morgan Cream the unenviable task of following you with the student representative report. Oh, and you're still muted, Morgan.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say tonight that students have completed their first week of AP testing. We are now entering the second and final week of AP testing and looking to finish strong in these last few weeks of the school year. And that's all that I had to share with you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the announcement of new student representatives for the 2020-2021 school year, and I believe that is Dr. Torres.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. 2 weeks ago, Phil Lyons and myself, helped by the high school principals, interviewed a number of candidates. And tonight, I have the privilege and honor to announce who the selected students are. In first place, we have Zoe Wolf from North High School. Zoe is an Eau Claire native who thinks it's a beautiful city. In her free time, she enjoys biking downtown with friends and stopping to get ice cream. In school, her favorite subjects are science and math. She is in the student council and is a manager for the wrestling team. After high school, she would like to attend a university to become a science teacher. So is interested in reaching out to her peers in order to listen and honor all voices. From Memorial High School, the selected candidate is Emery Thal. Emery Thal is involved in mock trial, Young Democrats, and orchestra at Memorial. He plays viola, and for the Old Age Symphony Orchestra and Chamber Orchestra at Memorial, as well for the Chippewa Valley Youth Symphony. He is captain of the mock trial team. He hopes to study neuroscience and music after high school before pursuing an education and career in law. Emery is interested in challenging bias and divisions amongst students. Both Zoe and Emery are aware of inequities amongst their peers and are interested in promoting more access to opportunities for all students.
Thank you. We look forward to welcoming Zoe and Emery at a future meeting. We've had a great student representative this year in Morgan Cream, and I'm sure that's going to continue with these selections. I'm very excited to meet them both. We'll now move to the school board committee reports, and we will start with budget development.
Thank you. We did meet and spoke on May 12th. We had a meeting of the budget committee, and we had an update on the fund balance, especially in light of the very unusual circumstances of this year with the pandemic. We had a discussion about the vacation situation for 12-month employees. And we talked about summer projects as well. And we will be meeting again, but we need to convene our board first. And I did want to take just a moment, though, as long as I had the floor, to thank Dr. Eric Torres for his service as president. As someone who served as vice president a year ago, I had a taste of the job of president of this board, and I have a sense of I think we all as board members feel the weight of this responsibility of this role, but I know that as president, you bear an extra weight, a significant weight, and I'm even in the best of times. And this has been a difficult year, and I just am so grateful to Eric for the way that he's led us through this very eventful year. So just a quick word of thanks, and with that, that's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Harder. We'll go to demographic trends and facilities planning. Kim, it looks like you're ready to go.
I am. So a work group of demographic trends and facilities planning met on May 14th. with the goal of really studying some of the data and information around schools that are over capacity at the elementary level, and then they will bring that information to a meeting of the full committee this Thursday.
Thank you. And LEAP?
Good evening. The LEAP committee met last Tuesday. They spent time clarifying the role of the LEAP ambassador in the process that Dr. Torres referred to earlier. They have assigned 2 members to be ambassadors for the revision to the Arctic Zone's performance agreement. And so that process their participation in that will be part of the work that resumes this week on Wednesday. And then we spent some time continuing to define the partnership between LEAP and teaching and learning with the change in facilitation of the committee.
Then the policy and governance has not met since our last meeting. Is that correct, Dr. Torres?
That is correct.
Okay. I'll have a little something on that when we go to committee assignments a little bit later. For the legislative updates, there are 2 significant updates coming out of Madison, both of which, given our administration's staying ahead of everything that we're doing, we're going to hear more about later tonight in their presentations. So thank you for keeping on top of this for us. But I will mention the first one is that the Joint Finance Committee has approved the Department of Public Instruction's plan for the use of the $175 million provided for education in the Federal CARES Act. We will, I think, hear more about the specific amount that is being disbursed to ECASD in our presentation on budget scenarios later tonight. So I'll save that amount for later, but we now know what that is and can factor that into our planning. The second, I'm sure almost all of you listening know that that last week the state Supreme Court struck down Governor Evers' safer at home order. The Supreme Court decision does not, however, change the portion of the order that keeps schools closed through June 30th across the state. And as you'll recall, ECASD has already planned and prepared for an entirely virtual summer offering for the upcoming summer months. We will continue to work with our partners at state and county health departments in order to examine what scenarios are going to keep our students and staff safe for schools going forward. But for now, we do remain closed and will do so through the summer. And I think we'll hear more about that tonight too as we plan for potential scenarios for the fall. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Board members have been provided information about each of the items here, or we've discussed them at a previous meeting. We'll act on them with one vote and without discussion. If any board member wishes to have an item pulled, they may do so as I read it, and we will discuss and vote on that item separately. On the agenda, the consent agenda tonight is 6.2, the minutes of May 4th, 2020. 6.3, the financial report of April 2020. Gifts in the amount of $7,367 for the period of April 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2020. Payment of all bills in the amount of $5,071,563.38, and net payroll in the amount of $3,488,771.37 for the period of April 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2020. Human Resources Employment Report, 2020-2021 meal prices, approval of the 2020-21 Employee Handbook modifications, authorization to executive directors for summer months, and electrical engineer contract award. I would now hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Josh will make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Clements,
Yes.
Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll now move to our individually considered resolutions. The first one is school board member applications, interviews, and appointment. We have our 13 candidates with us in the meeting. Each of you will be provided 3 minutes to make an oral statement to the board. I believe we have used a random number generator to determine the speaking order. After those 3 minutes, it appears that it's there on the screen. After those 3 minutes for each candidate, the board will vote one time. If no applicant receives 4 votes, we will remove the lowest vote getters. And at that point, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions of the remaining candidates. And then we will vote again until we have a selection. So at this time, it looks like our first. Yes.
I just wanted to do the randomizing live, if that's okay. So I have them in alphabetical, and I'll just click the button so that it's all on the screen. And
that is tremendous. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there we go. So that is our order then.
Okay, so it looks like our first applicant is Anton Smets. If I mispronounce anyone's name, please feel free to correct me when you start, or don't and correct me privately later. So do we have Mr. Smets unmuted?
He is unmuted, yes.
Okay. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anton Smets, and I thank you for this opportunity. It is my understanding that you have read my application and rationale for seeking this position, and therefore I would like to use these 3 minutes to tell you some other things about myself. This past January, I joined Eau Claire's substitute teacher pool. After a 4-decade career as a child psychologist, I do not miss my therapeutic work, but kids energize me and I miss them. As Mr. S at Prairie Ridge Early Learning Program, I sat with 6 4-year-olds during snack time. The fruit of the day was kiwi. There were a lot of worried faces and few takers. The girl next to me looked at me as if to say, "What's up with these?" I told her kiwis are from a land called Australia, far away, and did she know why girls in that country are smarter and stronger than anywhere else? They think it's because they eat kiwis, I said. She popped a piece in her mouth. At the 7th hour at Memorial English class, my instructions read to see that the day's absentee list should reach the front office. A handsome, smartly dressed young man had approached me earlier and told me he would be happy to take the list to the office. I had actually noticed him on the class list with pictures of all smiling teens, except one, a somber-looking young man who made poor eye contact even in a photograph. He sat aside, chewing on his rather tattered t-shirt sleeve, and I went to him and asked if he could possibly bring the list to the office. He colored deep red, said yes, and I did not miss his smile upon leaving the room. Years ago, when I was president of the Montessori school board here in town, I also volunteered as a reading tutor. I sat with a 4th grade girl against the hallway wall with the task to finish the chapter. I cheated, and after reading a short sentence, I suggested I would repeat that sentence in 3 different languages for her to repeat. We both giggled ourselves through some accented Dutch, French, and German. What's the point of this, you may ask? Well, I sat on enough boards to know the work can be tedious, sometimes routine, and more often complex, not to mention the enormous challenge of COVID-19 and the immediate future. While I am prepared for that, I want you to know that throughout all the tasks, I will have a razor-sharp eye and ear for how we can get our students to try kiwi, symbolically speaking. How we can reach out and empower those whose opportunities seem limited, and how we should use our institution to show the children that there is a much bigger and strangely exciting world out there for which we want to prepare them very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Eric Fisher.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, my name is Eric Fisher, and for those of you who don't know me, I ran as a write-in candidate in the most recent spring election, coming up just behind Board Member Clements. And I have sent my application to you guys to consider me for this position. Many people ask me why I would want to be on the school board, and it's a pretty simple answer. We need more student representation on our school board. I see firsthand the problems students face because I'm in the classroom every day. I want to end things like high stakes testing because I've seen my teachers' ability to do their job reduced to a test score, and that's not okay. I think we should engage younger people in our community and get them more involved in our school community and in our politics. I think we should have more of a, I feel like we should involve more students in their ideas because we are currently in school and we see those problems firsthand, like I said, and I would like to give students a voice on our school board.
Thank you. Next is Joshua Andrew.
Good evening. I am Joshua Andrew, and I thank you, first of all, for your understanding should you hear some of our youngest district members getting ready for bed upstairs. I also want to express my gratitude for your considering me for this position. As a graduate of both the Eau Claire Area School District and UW Eau Claire, I'm grateful for the opportunity to express why I should be allowed to give back to the community in this way. But I will admit, it is humbling to compare myself to the exceptional caliber of such well-qualified applicants, including my former principal, all of whom are willing to faithfully serve this community. It gives me great hope for the future of my children, knowing we live in a community with a plethora of fine and willing community servants. Eau Claire Area School District is a well-respected and outstanding district. However, our district is at a critical juncture in determining its continued long-term success. Our students, employees, and community members need committed visionary leaders who will make informed decisions concerning strategic district growth, continued academic and preparatory program quality, and the ongoing holistic development and well-being of our students. While there are many impressive applicants for this position, I would respectfully suggest that the board needs to choose a candidate who demonstrates experience in the fields of education, financial administration, community relations, and ascertaining and meeting the individual needs of our students. I've asked to be considered tonight based upon the diversity of professional experiences and perspectives that I can offer to the board. As an educator and doctoral candidate in curriculum and instruction, I can help ensure the ongoing quality of our programs to promote greater academic achievement and student success. As a retired United States Army officer, my experience in leadership, administration, and financial management will contribute to effective fiscal policy as the board looks to improve or expand necessary infrastructure and recruit and retain our qualified educators. As an ordained minister, I have an extensive history of serving the holistic needs of people, as well as fostering meaningful relationships with community partners. These experiences allow me to attend to the diverse needs of students, faculty, and community stakeholders with compassion, wisdom, and integrity. While any of the candidates before you tonight will be able to lend distinction to the board, I hope you will consider the diversity of experiences and skills that I offer as a valuable asset to the future of the school district. Moreover, I trust the board will take into consideration the desire and ability of applicants to provide continuity through longevity of service. There's been a lot of turnover on the board, and our community, our students, and the leadership vision for our district demands consistency. We deserve leaders who are fully invested and committed to the work of this district, as I hope to be. Again, thank you, and I wish you well as you make this decision.
Thank you. Next up is Scott Zielski.
President Nordine, I do not currently have a Scott Zielski on my list. However, I have one call-in user I'd like to unmute to make sure that it is not Scott. One moment. Call-in user, you've been unmuted. Are you Scott?
Okay, well,
I don't think we have Scott.
I think I agree with you. Thank you. Then next up is Thomas Fiedler.
Thank you, President Nordine, and appreciate the opportunity to present to the board tonight. Again, my name is Thomas Fiedler, and we have been residents in Eau Claire for our entire adult lives. We have 3 adult children, all attended and graduated from the Eau Claire area schools. I am retired, but I was an employee with the Eau Claire area schools for 31 years. Positions held were teacher at DeLong, assistant principal at DeLong, assistant principal Memorial. For 9 years, I was the assistant superintendent for personnel, which is today's executive director of human resources. And in that position, I sat at the board, attended all the board meetings. I was North Star's first principal, oversaw the planning and construction staffing of that school. Then was transferred to North, which I stayed for 6 years as their principal. Went back to North Star and then retired. Retirement lasted only about a day before I went to the school district of New Auburn and served as their superintendent for 4 years. So given all of that, other things I should add would be that I have a doctorate in ed leadership from the University of Minnesota. I've taught several ed leadership classes as an adjunct instructor at 3 different universities. I've been involved in numerous governmental and nonprofit boards within the community. But now you ask, and I'll explain in terms of why did I apply for this position. It's my feeling that boards always have tough issues on their agenda. But as been noted several times tonight, the pandemic has made things even tougher. So it is the time that we live in, coupled with my admiration and respect for the Eau Claire Area School District, that caused me to feel it's time to get off the sidelines and to make an offer to get involved, hence the application. I realize that issues facing the board, any school board, but your board as well, can be complex with no clear solution. I do not have all the answers, but I feel my training and experiences as a career-long educator gives me a strong foundation for understanding and dealing with these issues. And it is this foundation that would help me become a contributing member to the Board of Education. So I have no hidden agenda. I represent no special interest group. I am not a disgruntled taxpayer, but I'm an educator and someone who would work with the other members of the board to deal with the pressing issues of the moment while continuing to support activities that promote each area of the district's strategic plan. Ultimately, we want each and every student within the Eau Claire School District to be well served. So I would be honored to be on the school board. And I
Thank you, Dr. Fiedler. I hate to cut you off, but just in the interest of fairness, so I have to stop at 3 minutes. I know you were probably 1/2 sentence away.
I was. I have a second away.
Yeah, thank you. Our next applicant is Amy Olson.
Hello and good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right. My name is Amy Olson, and again, thank you for your time tonight. I am here to discuss my desire for joining the board, which is really fueled by 3 factors. First, as an Eau Claire community member, I really believe in the power and necessity of a robust public education system. Education is not only the foundation, but I believe it is also a continual supporting element in promoting a healthy, prosperous, and safe community. Secondly, my desire to join the board is driven by my role as an involved and loving mother of 3 children who are currently enrolled within the district. I have witnessed firsthand the amazing education that is offered, including the supportive services that are available to the children who have IEPs or individualized educational plans. As a devoted parent and a member of the school board, I will ensure the programming, policies, and services are carefully designed and implemented to support both the mission and vision of the district. Lastly, I am seeking this board seat as I feel I can bring a diverse yet valuable perspective. As mentioned in my application, I have a doctoral degree in nursing practice along with a master's degree in nursing education. I have experience working as an educator at Chippewa Valley Technical College from 2013 to 2019. There I served as both a faculty and an administrator. I was the Associate Dean of Health, and I was an integral part in establishing the healthcare high school academies. So I've had the opportunity to work with many of the Eau Claire Area School District employees in putting forth those initiatives. In addition to my experience at CVTC, I am currently an education specialist at Mayo Clinic Health System. And I think that we can all agree, especially during these times, my firsthand knowledge and experience as a healthcare professional will be very valuable as an asset to the board as we move forward in establishing a new norm post-COVID-19. I feel my medical knowledge and experience can be not only assistance to the board, but to all of our children who are needing quality education through our district. In closing, I would again like to thank you for your time here tonight, as well as the countless hours I know that many of you spend behind the scenes to ensure our children have a safe and prosperous environment to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Justin Hendrickson.
Members of the board, can you hear me?
We can, Justin. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight you have a challenging decision to make. You have a pool of qualified candidates to choose from with impressive credentials and diverse backgrounds. To help you, I'll endeavor to highlight some of the things I feel that set me apart from the other candidates. I've been a software engineer for over 20 years. It is something I find great joy in doing and I strive to excel at. At the core of my profession is a process of communication and planning that is critical to success. Gathering requirements from stakeholders, analyzing data, breaking down complex tasks into manageable components, planning when and how duties will be done, and only then executing the plan. It is not a coincidence that this will sound familiar. These steps are common to many fields, and I am confident that these skills I have developed during my career will be valuable additions to the board in their deliberations. I am also the parent of 3 elementary-age students, one of whom has an IEP, and I have experienced many of the challenges that other families in our district deal with every day. The difficulty of finding resources for a child, self-doubt, countless meetings with district staff, doctors, and specialists. I have also seen the compassion of our community and school staff and the successes that can be achieved with the right interventions. If appointed, I would use these experiences to help shape the decisions of the board. Further, I have a commitment to drive that you are no doubt aware of. For the past 18 months, I have been attending school board and subcommittee meetings and work sessions. In that time, I've been actively engaged with the board on several issues. I have spoken during public comments and meetings on multiple occasions, worked with my wife to develop an alternative plan for north side boundary changes, collaborated with members of the board to improve open meeting law compliance, and used data gathered from public record requests to create a report about elementary enrollment trends using techniques gathered from other school districts around our state and country. During this time, I've met many members of our community, and their support encouraged me to write as a running candidate in the spring election. I was humbled to receive their votes despite not being able to do any significant campaigning due to the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next on the list is Erica Zur.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for your service to our district. So I'm nervous, and the best I can come up with is to tell a couple of stories because that's what early childhood educators are really good at. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a Montessori teacher, and a few years ago during training, I heard a story about when Maria Montessori told her parents she was going off to medical school, which women did not do at the time. And her father was quite ashamed of her and said, why can't you be a teacher like everyone else? To which she responded, anything but a teacher. And this reminded me of my college advisor, Rick Diaz, who wanted me to be a teacher so badly, he made me his supplemental instructor. And where I loved teaching, at the end of the day, I wanted to be more than a teacher. So I added a political science degree to my worthless history degree with grand plans to pursue law like my grandfather, or go on to become a civil rights advocate, or at the very least, be like Indiana Jones, who was my childhood hero. So anything, I thought at the time, but a teacher. After I graduated, however, life happened. I got married, became a mother, got a measly job at a conservation nonprofit. And when it came time for my daughter to start school, I succumbed to first child syndrome. And of course, dreamed that she would be a lawyer, a civil rights advocate, or a rogue archaeologist. And where this was misguided, gratefully, it pushed me back into education. And I observed and toured so many schools. I read books and innovative early childhood practices, and eventually toured our public Montessori school. And it was in that classroom that I really rekindled my love of education. I threw myself into the life of my child's school. I read every Montessori book I could get my hands on. And then I got an opportunity to work in a Montessori school, received my training, and became a teacher under incredible educators who have served as inspirations and mentors ever since. So here I am, a teacher after all, and it is more than I could ever imagine. It has taught me that to encourage growth in others, whether that be academic, personal, social, emotional, it requires observation. It comes from patience. It comes from diligent data collection and instinct. It comes from restraint and reflection. Perhaps most importantly, I have learned that service to my students means service to all students, no matter their challenges, learning styles, or goals. There is such a delicate balance to be struck, such beauty and challenge in the opportunity of teaching. And it is with this spirit that I hope to bring to our district. I want to support our district's growth with a dedication to observation and patience, and with a mind to the delicate balance a board member must strike between oversight and management. Community involvement and organization has become my greatest strength, and I would like to leverage it to get to know the people, processes, and issues, both chronic and acute, that we face, and make the best decision with the most information that I can at the time. My personal passions rest in equitable practices, innovative opportunities, and social and emotional literacy, but I also recognize that I have a lot to learn about our district, and I plan on being a student as much as a servant to this amazing community. So when I ran for school board last year, I heard the same thing from nearly every family, student, and staff member I spoke to.
Thank you, Ms. Zur. I have to cut you off. I'm sorry. That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry.
Next on our list is Wayne Dahlman.
Hello. Thank you for your time, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. And thank you for your service, and thank you to all of the strong candidates who have already spoken. My name is Wayne Dahlman. I have 4 children, all attending schools in the Eau Claire Area School District. I've been an active volunteer in the community by volunteering in schools and helping coach a variety of sports. As parents, I feel we want our kids to love learning, to be curious, to be self-motivated, to help others, and to be happy. And that's why I'm very excited about the direction our district is headed in terms of the board's goals, such as the Whole Child Initiative, and in terms of newer educational opportunities like dual language immersion. I feel this district strategic plan lays out a very good framework of goals, and I like that many of the goals are measurable and include a clear plan for how data will be gathered to measure progress. To give some details about me, I graduated in 2003 from UW-Eau Claire with a double major in elementary education and in learning disabilities. I was trained in nonviolent crisis intervention while I worked at the Eau Claire Academy. And during my 5 years as a special education teacher, I earned my 316 reading teacher certification. As a special education teacher, I provided individualized instruction based on the needs of each child, as determined by the IEP team. And when I ran IEP meetings, it was very important to me that parents were supported and were listened to and were empowered members of the team. At Augusta Elementary, where I taught, the culture was very collaborative. And as a teacher who had some training in behavior modification, I could observe classrooms, gather data, help create workable behavior management, and individualized behavior modification plans when necessary. In any classroom, I believe behavior management is a top priority so that all students can learn. I took a year of sabbatical in the 2008-2009 school year due to an opportunity to run my father's business, the Dahlman Insurance Agency. Since becoming an owner of our agency, our staff has grown from 1 person to 7, and I enjoy the challenges of running a business in our community, and the flexibility has allowed me to be there for my kids in a way that would not have been possible had I continued teaching. On most days, I drop my kids off and I pick them up from school. I chaperone field trips, volunteer at school events, do guest reading. I teach junior achievement, experiences that I'm very grateful to be able to have. As far as district priorities, I believe retaining high quality teachers is critical to building high quality programs. And I believe teachers want to work with their administrators and their board, listen to their concerns and anxieties, and where they're allowed to make and correct mistakes on their journeys as educators. If selected as a school board member, it would be an honor. It would be my hope that my perspective as a former teacher, as an active member of the community, and as a parent of 4 children in our district would be an asset to the board in our discussions, deliberations, and decision-making. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next on the list is Markel Johnson.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Yeah, that's Markwell Johnson.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I would like to thank the school board for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of my candidacy for commissioner. I've had the opportunity to live in 2 great neighborhoods that allowed me to meet neighbors whose children have gone through Eau Claire Area School District from kindergarten through 12th grade. Many of them speak positively about their children's experiences. I would like to serve with the board to ensure these experiences continue, not only for my children, but all children the district serves. Personal attributes I would bring to the board include firsthand experiences from my children and wife who are part of the Eau Claire Area School District. I would also provide perspective from an underserved group within the district. Professional attributes I would bring to the board include familiarity with Wisconsin's Department of Public Instruction and teacher training standards, professional development centered on evidence-based practices, knowledge of strategies for inclusions for students with disabilities. I have also served and chaired numerous committees during my 13 years of service at UW Eau Claire, providing critically and objectively based insights. I welcome the opportunity to engage in this civic responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Melissa Allen.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all. Well, unlike a lot of the other candidates that have spoken before me, I do not hold multiple degrees. I have not worked in public education before until recently becoming the director of procurement at UW Eau Claire, and I have become very familiar with the complex laws and rules for the state of Wisconsin, and have been able to effectively communicate between stakeholders and members of faculty and staff, building meaningful relationships to help them understand that procurement is not the bad guy. I'm used to, you know, people tell me you must have a really tough job. You must have to say no a lot. And while that may be true in a lot of ways, I think that building those relationships are very important, and I can speak for, as a community member, as once having been a single mother to now, you know, having a family with a husband and a child with special needs, special education needs. I can connect with all members of the community, and I believe that I bring a unique skill set for understanding the complexities, but also understanding how important it is to build those relationships. And that really, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have the rare opportunity to reshape what we can envision as to what education will look like for everyone. I think this brings a great opportunity for everyone to you know, think outside the box and to come together in a way that has never been done before. And I think that while there's a lot of anxiety and hardship and challenges through all of that, I believe that we can come up with something new, something different, something that we can all be proud of. And as a strong community that we have, we can shape that for us. And I'm excited to think of the prospect of being a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Nathan Moquin, although I've been informed that we don't have him on the list. Marissa, if you would check our call-in, our unidentified call-in to see if that is.
Happy to do so. Calling user, you've been unmuted. Are you Nathan?
One hell of a cop. One hell of a name.
I don't think that's Nathan.
I don't either. So we will move on to our last candidate, Omar Parks.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can, thank you.
Oh, excellent, thank you. My name is Dr. Omar Parks, and to tell you a little bit about myself, I've spent 20 years in education. That's all been in higher education, and I've worked in face-to-face residential settings as well as online settings. I've worked as a professor, I worked as an adjunct faculty member, program chair, dean of faculty, and various other capacities in education. Currently, I have a second grader that is at the Chippewa Valley Montessori School, and I sit on the parents board there. And as part of that, sitting on that board, I'm also a member of the Family Advisory Council, and that's what really drove me to this position, to apply for this position. And seeing all the wonderful things that goes on at the board, I would really like to continue to be part of that. Outside of that board experience, I've sat on a few advisory boards for universities, as well as being appointed to the Wisconsin Educational Approval Board by former Governor Walker. I served on that for 2 years, and that committee provided oversight for for-profit higher education institutions that were operating in the state of Wisconsin. What I feel that I could bring to the board in terms of my experience is thinking about the diverse educational models, especially in a time like this, with online learning and distance learning, reaching out to all of our students, making sure that they're achieving the reading and math levels that we've set, that the district has set, but also we're really working those community partnerships. I think it's important for the community to be involved in the K through 12 system, but also expanding programs, kind of like the one that CVTC has with the high schools, giving students an opportunity to really get a head start on their careers and getting middle grade students to get into systems where they can kind of explore some professions that they may want to pursue. I think it's important to not only develop the intellectual capital that we have here in Eau Claire, but also to retain that intellectual capital, not only in Eau Claire, but also in the state of Wisconsin. So I thank you for the opportunity to apply, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and present. I would like to wish everyone luck. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our candidate presentations. At this point, we are about ready to proceed to first round voting. My colleagues, if you had not found it already, Maida has resent the document with the link to voting. And before we open it up and vote, if any of you have questions about the procedure, not for the candidates, but just about the voting process, if there are any questions about that before we go through the voting, we should probably ask them now. Great. Hearing none, go ahead and click through the link and follow the instructions as printed in the email document.
Okay, Dr. Nordine, I have the results, and I will read them one by one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There are 4 votes for, uh-oh, my screen doesn't want to slide. That's a problem. Hold on just a moment. Office decided it didn't want to respond.
Abby, let me know if you need any assistance.
Okay, thanks, Maida. I'm trying to try a different link. Because my office decided it didn't want to respond anymore. So I've got like the circle of death. Okay, so it appears that Markel Johnson has 4 votes. And so because that is a quorum, and that's the majority of our members present, that would mean he is our new representative for the school board.
Abby, I think for the record, we do need to read aloud each board member's vote and who they voted for.
And because I missed it the first time, I will remember that Dr. Johnson reminded me that it's Marquell.
Marquell, okay. Maida, I'm having problems. Let me see if I can get this to open in Excel so I can tell you who voted for who.
And I do have the Excel sheet open if you want me to read them as well.
Okay, just give me a moment. Okay. So I do have them so I can read them to you. Oh, maybe I can't. So Dr. Torres voted for Marquell. Did I get it right this time? Thank you. Dr. Bika also voted for Marquell. Commissioner Harder voted for Erica Zur. Commissioner Clements voted for Amy Olson. Commissioner Lyons voted for Marquell. And Commissioner Nordine also voted for Marquell. I think that's all 6 of them.
It is. Thank you, Abby. Congratulations, Dr. Johnson. We look forward to you joining us on the board at the next meeting. I'm sure that Maida will be in touch with you to get you sworn in. Thank you to all of our applicants, and a reminder that if you were not selected tonight, you have another opportunity if you would like. I believe you've been given information on how to roll your application over if that is your pleasure. During the applicants, I was gently reminded that I failed to go back to Dr. Hardebeck after the consent agenda as I was racing through to try to do everything well. And if I did everything right the first time, how would we know how good I was at the end of my term at this year? So we'll go back a moment to Dr. Hardebeck, who has an announcement after the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Nordine. With the approval of the Human Resources Report tonight and the consent agenda, you also approved the appointment of Michelle Weiberg as the next principal of DeLong Middle School. Michelle graduated from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse with a Bachelor of Science in School Health Education in 1995. And she holds licenses through the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction as a pre-kindergarten through 12th grade health teacher and also as a principal. Michelle has been at DeLong for a long time. She started with the Eau Claire Area School District right after graduation in 1995 as a health teacher at DeLong and South Middle Schools. She worked as a health teacher until the 2001 2001-2002 teacher school year when she became the assistant principal at DeLong Middle School. And she's been in that role ever since. I hope that her colleagues at DeLong stay tuned into the board report. We talked today about her appointment at DeLong, and I have to say the staff was cheering her on. and I hope that they still are cheering her on. We know that she has big shoes to fill. We have high expectations for her. And Michelle, we certainly look forward to your leadership at DeLong Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're excited to welcome Michelle to the next step up at DeLong. Our next agenda item is the appointment of school board committees. After asking my colleagues' preferences, I have submitted a suggested set of committee assignments. Any of you that have taken the opportunity to look at it will notice there are several TBDs on there. That's to have some continued discussion about board involvement on various committees, and also, of course, because we have just appointed a new member tonight, and we'll do so again at our next meeting, and we want to make sure that there is opportunity for them to participate in our committees as well. You'll also find Dr. Torres on the Policy and Governance Committee. Our hope is that we will be able to schedule one more Policy and Governance Committee meeting prior to Dr. Torres' resignation so that he can turn over the reins. He has been chairing that committee, and we hope to add him in. And then, of course, his seat will also be one of the TBDs. So at this point, I would entertain any discussion or questions board members have, or a motion to approve the assignments.
I would move to approve the assignment.
Josh will second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Our next agenda item is vacation time. I believe that is Abby Johnson and Kay Marks.
You are correct. So I'm prepping to share my screen. And then Kay and I will go from there. Okay. Kay's going to start us off.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My little sign didn't look like I was unmuted. Good evening, everybody. As Abby indicated, we are going to be tag teaming the presentation tonight. And Abby, do you have it up yet?
I do. Did I not share my screen again?
It is not shared currently.
I was going
Oh,
to say,
boy.
I only saw Tim on my screen. Not that I don't want to see your smiling face, Tim.
No, I come from a long line of people who are better without a video.
Content. Let's try this one.
There we go.
There.
Okay, better. Sorry about that.
That looks better. Yep. Okay. So, Abby and I had some time with Budget Development Committee last week speaking about an item that we wanted to share with the board related to a concern that had come forward related to 12-month employees and vacation. So a little bit of background before we dive into the concern that we want to share with you, and that relates to how vacation works for 12-month employees. So the way that it works is that you have throughout the year to use it. Obviously, our contracts go July 1 to June 30th, and so that's also our fiscal year, obviously. And so we have the opportunity to use vacation. Many of the positions can carry vacation over, and you can see in the grid on the screen the amount of carryover days that are allowed per employee group. And then if you don't either use the vacation or you have excess days more than what's allowed to be carried over for your employee group, you wind up forfeiting those days. This particular year, as you can all imagine, has been a bit unique with the mandated school closure. And so there's been an impact to the amount of vacation days that staff have this spring that are still remaining. And so when we got close to this time period, we had asked for kind of a reports to be done so we could see where employees were at with the amount of vacation days that were still remaining. The majority of positions that have these days are positions that struggle to use the time when students are in school, in session. And so many positions use this time over winter break, spring break, summertime, June. And so when spring rolled around and the mandated school closure came about, that was a point in time when, let's take buildings and grounds, for example. It was all hands on deck. And there was nobody who was taking any vacation time. Similar to any of our IT positions who receive vacation, which would be in the grid, you're looking at the non-affiliated employee group. So in that area, as I'm sure you can imagine, there wasn't anybody who was looking to take a day off as we looked to be able to equip staff and students with devices as we looked to transition into at-home learning. So at a point in time when many positions would look to utilize vacation time, it was also a position or a point in time when those positions were needed the most. And so we found ourselves kind of in a perfect storm where there just wasn't the time available for staff to be gone because that was the time that we needed everybody the most. So we came up with some options of what it might look like to be able to try to resolve the issue at hand. And so Abby, if you could move on to the next slide.
Yep. Maybe.
So we'll speak about each one of these in depth, including the pros and cons of each. But the first option would be to look at employees carrying over the days that they normally would have forfeited after July 1. The second option would be for the district to pay out the days that would be carried over after July 1. Then the third option would be to include employee choice in that in the options. So in option 3A, we would look to convert 100% of the earned and unused days from this school year to sick time into next school year. Or option 3B would be to convert 50% of those days from this school year into sick time and then pay out the remaining 50%. So once we get through all of these, you will see that in the very end that our recommendation would be for the board to consider option 2 as the default, being that we would just look to pay out everybody's forfeited days after July 1. And then if employees would like to choose, they could then choose to pick either 3A or 3B. But as a standard, the district would choose option 2, saying this is the way we're going to handle it, unless an employee would choose option 3A or 3B. So, Abby, if you could move on to the next slide.
Yes, thanks, Kay. So we decided to break the options down into a little bit more detail for the board and allow the opportunity for questions if needed, or we can take them at the end. So each group has a variety of employees in it and a variety of days that are earned and unused from 1920. So just for everyone to know, we took this information as of May 1st. And please remember that there are employees that are taking vacation and able to take vacation between now and June 30th. So the information I'm sharing tonight is just an estimate based upon the data we had as of May 1st. So the way that the graph works for option 1, if you'll remember, is just to roll over any vacation time and not forfeit any of the days that would normally be forfeited as of June 30th. So in the custodial group, Earned and unused days from 1920 range anywhere from 5 days to 29 days. They would earn additional days for the 2021 year in the range of 10 days to 25 days. And that would make their total days to take in 2021 to 20 to 54. If you'll think about that a little bit, it's very difficult for us as a staff to find subs for a month to 2 months worth of working days to be able to take off that time. On average, a month has about 20 working days. And so when we were looking at that, one of the reasons why this wasn't an administrative recommendation is knowing that it's hard to find substitutes for some of these areas that need them. And then would we be able to find substitutes for somebody that has 20 days of vacation? They may not take it all at once, but just over the course of the year, that could be a lot of days. Up to 54 days could be extra challenging as well. If you look at the classified group, the range of employees that are in there, their low end is 7 days as of May 1st, and the high end was 25 days. If you add on another 10 to 25 days, that ranges between 23 and 50 days. When you look at the non-affiliated category, their earned and unused from 1920 is in the range of 6 to 19 days, and they would get 10 to 25 days, again, making that total range of 27 to 41. When you look at the administrative team, the earned and unused days from 1920 was at a minimum of 12 days all the way up to 30 days. And then their next year's granted days are 20 to 25, making it 32 to 53. And then finally, for the executive team, their earned and unused days range from 15 to 25, and they are granted 25 days for the next year. So that made their range of 40 to 50 days. And so hopefully that helps. We did get some questions at budget development, but hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to understand what the ramifications would be to just lift the handbook rules of carrying over the vacation.
So here you can see, as I had indicated earlier, that as we go through each option, we'd look at the pros and cons to each. And so here we have it listed with either a plus or a minus in front of each. The positive to option one would be obviously that if we lifted the carryover limits and we allowed employees to be able to carry over the full amount of days that they would normally be forfeiting, we're still allowing employees to maintain a benefit. They're not losing anything. They're not going to have to forfeit. So that would be a pro to this, is that we're allowing them to carry over what would normally be the excess of days. But the cons to this is that then, as indicated in the previous chart in the dark gray columns, there is a large excess in the vacation days, which would be, as Abby had pointed out, a large amount of days to try to use, and probably likely too large for anybody to be able to get done in one given year. The other points were that, and Abby had hinted to this as well, that several of the positions require us to secure a sub for them. So it would be challenging in an era when we already have a hard time finding subs. So the sub utilization would be a challenging component to be able to add more days on, in which we're going to have to try to find a sub. And then there's the cost of substitutes as well. The other piece is just the cost in general. As it stands right now, these days will be the least expensive that you will ever find the days. The farther down the road that those days are pushed, those days will only become more expensive. Because it is a vacation day, that day is paid out upon separation from employment. And so that day is the least expensive to the district today than what it will be 5 or 10 years from now when an employee may separate from employment. So from the cost to the district, the farther down the road that day goes, the more expensive that day will become. And so that would be one of the negatives or the cons to pushing that day farther down the calendar than what it would be in this year. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you, Kay. So option number 2 is the cost of vacation forfeiture as of May 1st by group. So you can see in option 2, that would be the number of days that were in excess of 5 or 10 based upon the categories, and that was highlighted under option 1 on the first graph. And so we've costed out what the additional amount of those days would be by group. And as you can see, it would be a total of $223,821.97. And keep in mind, again, that this was measured as of May 1st, and it is likely that employees will have taken vacation, so that dollar amount would be less.
And again, the pros and cons being evaluated after each option. Again, this would be an opportunity for employees to maintain a benefit if we looked to pay out for those forfeited days. In previous presentations, Abby had talked about the fact that funds were available this year due to the mandated school closure and less expenditures being forced upon the district's budget. So this would be a point in time where there may be some funds available to be able to find the dollars that Abby just spoke about. There wouldn't be a substitute cost associated with this option, nor would there be the utilization for subs that we would have to try to find. As I talked about before, with pushing the days farther down the road to future calendars, this would be the lowest cost to the district if we were looking to either utilize those days or to pay the days out. This is the point in time in any given year which the days will be the least expensive to the district. And then there's the employee recognition piece. We've spoken a lot about how unprecedented this time is, and for multiple positions in the district that have worked, even in the presentations that Dr. Torres spoke about earlier today, and the work that he spoke of regarding the different things that were being done. There's a lot of positions and a lot of people that have worked extremely diligently to be able to get us from March 16th to where we are today. And that's gone with a lot of literally around the clock hours to be able to get the district to the point that it is now. And so it's an opportunity to recognize the work that these employees have done, and the fact that they haven't been able to take any time off to do that, or we wouldn't have been able to get to the point that we are now. And so this again provides an opportunity for the district to recognize that by not allowing the benefits to go unmaintained, and by recognizing employees for that work by paying them out for that benefit, not having them lose anything.
Thanks, Kay.
You're welcome.
So employee choice was something that was discussed heavily at budget development last week. And so we've shaded them to try to help differentiate between the two options that were considered employee choice. So employee choice A is really the same information from slide 1 with the earned and unused days from 1920. And so that amount under employee choice A would be that the employee could convert all of those days into sick time to be used in 2021 or beyond. Sick time for this group of employees maxes out with 120 days of sick time. And then the employee choice B was converting 50% of the earned and unused days from 1920 into sick time to be used in the future. And then the other 50% is 50% of what the cost of the forfeited days would look like. And so, again, if the board was to choose this recommendation, employees would provide the information with employee choice A, they want it all to sick time, or employee choice B, a 50-50 combination. And again, these days and the dollars are based upon what was on May 1st of 2020. And then for the administrative recommendation, as Kay spoke to earlier, we talked about option 2 as being the default. And then option 3A or 3B would provide the employee choice that was discussed during the Budget Development Committee meeting last week. So now we're ready to take any questions that you have. And if you don't have any questions, the options would be to vote on one of the four that was presented, and we laid them out for you. And a reminder is option 4 was the administrator's recommendation.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Abby. This is just another example of the hard work that is going into preparing for so many different scenarios over this time, and we appreciate the time that you're putting into it. Comments or questions from board members?
Kay, you mentioned that the day gets more expensive by delaying it into future calendar years. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So let's say for an average custodian that I'm just for argument's sake, let's say that their average day right now is $100. Abby's laughing at me because she's a numbers person and I'm not, so I always use even numbers. But so let's say that their average day right now is $100, and if we push it down the road farther, and by the time that person separates from employment, let's say that's 4 years down the road, that day will be valued at a lot more than $100 by that point in time, because each year that day becomes more expensive with both benefits and with salary. You know, as that increases, that by the time they separate from employment 4 years down the road, that day might by then be, I don't know, $125, $130. And so the farther down the road that day goes, the more expensive the day becomes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And then the conversion to sick time. When an employee, sick time doesn't, it carries over year after year after year and it builds up, correct?
Correct. You can accumulate up to 120 days of sick time. And then at that point in time, it's max and it doesn't accumulate anymore. The difference between sick time and vacation time is that upon separation, you're not paid out for your sick time. And so if you leave us at retirement or resignation, and if you had a sick day accumulation of 120 days, you just leave that. You don't get paid out for that. And so that's a big difference between sick and vacation.
So there's no conversion of that sick time into any benefit at separation?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Harder?
Thank you. I'd like to just clarify, when we talk about option 3 having actually 2 choices that are can be, I believe if I'm reading it correctly, can be selected by the employee between A or B. And then we talk about option 4 is actually offering 3 options then. One is option 2, and then option 3A and option 3B. So there are 3 options in option 4 that the employee can choose from. Am I reflecting that correctly?
Yes, you are. If an employee notifies us that they want option 3, they would have to tell us 3A or 3B. So essentially, option 4, the 2 is default. And if employees don't tell us, then we would just go with the payout. And then if an employee chooses to communicate with us, they would tell us, I want 3A or 3B.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Abby or Kay, can you just give a potential rationale for why someone might choose option 3A or 3B in lieu of the payout?
Sure. We talked a little bit about this, I think, at budget development, but just to put it on the record, we might have a staff member who is early in their career or has had a significant medical situation, and they, or maybe they know something's coming up in the future, and so perhaps they know that they would like to have some additional sick time. And so that would be why choice A would be chosen, is just to, instead of getting that paid out now, it could be used in the future. maybe they have an upcoming surgery or a maternity or a paternity leave. And that would be one reason to do that. And then option B would be, similar reasons. Maybe they, again, know of something that's coming up that they will be taking some sick time in the future, but they don't want to put it all into sick time. And so that's why B offers that 50-50 split. It's a way for them to get a little bit of cash, but also have some dollars set aside in sick time for a future need that they may or may not be aware of at this point in time.
Sure, thank you. Other questions from board members? Comments?
Yeah, one more. So I would imagine that not all employees, that some employees actually might have been pressed to actually be required to take vacation. Were there any instances of school district employees that, because of a downturn in work, really were required to take vacation as opposed to having it accrued?
Commissioner Lyons, I'm not sure if I understand your question. Are you talking about during the time of the mandated school closure, or are you talking about just in general being required to take vacation?
Yeah, I wasn't exactly clear. So because of the pandemic, I'm thinking that some work was not, that there were individuals that didn't have the workload that they would have had normally if we were in face-to-face operations. So as I'm thinking about this from an all-employee perspective, I'm just wondering if there are employees that were required to take vacation that will be looking at this saying, well, that's not really fair to me. I had to take vacation and I couldn't have gotten the payout because I had to take it. Does that make sense?
Yep, I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
I think I understand what you're asking. So nobody was required to take vacation because of, a lack of work during the mandated school closure. And part of the reason why that didn't occur is because any of the positions where there may have been a turn in their workload would have come in our school year positions, because their workload would have looked different because students weren't here. And so that we found other things to supplement their work in other areas where there was a higher demand for their work. But for the most part, the positions that we're talking about are 12-month positions. Well, in all cases, the positions we're talking about are 12-month positions where the workload didn't, if the workload changed, it only increased during the mandated school closure because of the fact that we were in the situation that we were in. And because it increased, then there wasn't, in a lot of cases, the opportunity to take the vacation had they wanted to, which is why, we're asking for what we're asking. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, that's exactly what I was interested in. Thank you.
Oh. You're welcome.
If there are no other questions, then I would hear a motion to approve one of the options, or of course, we can still have the floor open for comments and questions.
Dr. Nordine?
Yes, Dr. Torres.
I'll move to approve option 4.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
So moved by Dr. Torres, seconded by Dr. Bika. This is financial, so let's take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Clements,
Yes.
Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordine.
Yes.
Commissioner Torres.
Yes.
Commissioner Bika.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. And thank you once again for all the work putting this together, Abby and Kay and your teams. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We will now adjourn to committee. We have one committee report tonight, the fall 2020-21 possible scenarios.
So as they're getting their presentation together, I'd like to say a few words about the situation that we find ourselves in now. You know, with 18 virtual school days to go last week, and this week counting down to 13 school days to go, we have faced many, many challenges through this stay-at-home order. And there is a persistent uncertainty that goes on as this closure progresses and also as we start the reopening of the state. As we began to work with our community to prepare for the closure, I know that all of you on the board are aware that we had many staff members who worked around the clock to prepare students and teachers for what we at first expected to be a 3-week school closure. We have, since that time, distributed over 6,000 one-to-one devices to students and educators, fully loaded with instructional programs and apps to maintain regular daily contact between students and staff. Our technology team has done an outstanding job of establishing services such as drive-through services at the administration office to service technology or to troubleshoot or to provide further distribution and follow-up with students. The staff has also arranged to provide drive-through meal service during the school week to any student who's 18 years or younger. We have partnered with faith-based groups and nonprofits to help families cope with food insecurity. And we have, they've helped us with pop-up pantries and weekend food backpacks for families. We also connected with our transportation company, Student Transit, to help establish meals on yellow wheels or drop-offs for families unable to get to the drive-thrus during the middle of the day. And to date, working with our partners, we have distributed over 100,000 meals to students. And the Buildings and Grounds crew has been working on the arduous task of deep cleaning and disinfecting over 1.9 million square feet of school facility to prepare for reopening. Our hourly staff have helped with Buildings and Grounds to clear lockers, classrooms, and gym areas of student and staff belongings. They have bagged and labeled those belongings and have set up another drive-through system at each school to return those items to students, and staff will be able to return and get their items as school ends. So, you know, I was happy to kind of hear the school board candidates talk about what we've gone through with this, because it is has been a very, very arduous task. And there are many, many things left to determine as we go into the new school year. Our staff has been working to ensure the delivery of essential learning standards for over 11,500 students. And this is for many of them, it's a new and unpredictable virtual world. Will this virtual world continue in the fall, or will we experience some kind of hybrid of going back to school or having some type of virtual instruction as well? We've had to work very hard to make sure that students and staff continue to learn and teach in an emotionally safe and accountable environment, and to keep our students safe in that virtual environment. There have been many challenges associated with providing service to families who do not have access to the internet. or have enough technology in their homes to accommodate all of their children. We've had to maintain services for all students, special education students, bilingual students, gifted and talented students, economically disadvantaged and homeless students. And all of our students have special needs in terms of dealing with this crisis. We've had students who have been suffering from mental health difficulties, and we've had to figure out how to support them. We've tried to provide training for our educators so they can respond to the many needs of students. We've tried to find meaningful ways to celebrate graduation for the class of 2020. We had to make a decision to go on and go to virtual summer school because of the uncertainty around the reopening. And now we're at a point where we're having to plan for the reopening in September and not knowing what that school day is going to look like. So we have been working as an administrative team. We have put together a task force to start up the new school year. And we continue to use our values to guide our decision making. And I like to remind people of those values, that we love our students, we take care of each other, and we're in this together. And in holding to these values, we've learned that we must continue to operate around our three principles to provide equity and access for all students. Not all families have unlimited resources or online sources, and for some, there's no access at all. We recognize that some of our families are in difficult straits right now due to the virus. Many are struggling to meet their basic needs. And so providing access and equity demands individual resourcing rather than the resources that students often share in their schools, like computers and textbooks and materials, like art supplies or hotspots or library books. So we've learned some lessons. We've learned that we have to be flexible, that in the virtual environment, family members typically need to share devices and online time. We know that for many students, it's just not possible to be able to sit in front of a computer for the length of a school day. So there have to be other strategies that we use. And teachers have been required to develop lessons that can be accessed through various platforms, whether it's the internet or mail or the phone. And I think for teachers, it's been just as huge a learning curve for them as it has been for our students. And I really commend them for the work that they have done and the way that they have stepped up for our students. So in moving forward, we have to think about what can we do that regardless of the situation we find ourselves in, whether we're back to school, as we have always been, whether we're in a 100% virtual environment or whether we're in some hybrid, where we're in part of the time and out part of the time. I think that these are challenges that require a great deal of planning. So what we are asking our task force to do is to come up with strategies to meet those possible three scenarios. We're going to talk to you about that tonight. We're also looking at the financial situation in the state and what that might mean in terms of our funding. Whether we go forward as we had planned to with the second year of the biennium budget, or whether we have reductions. And we have developed three scenarios for that as well. So the executive team is going to start talking to you about what's in the planning stage. And, we look forward to your questions and to your suggestions.
Thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. I think that Marissa helped me share my screen. So you should see a slide right now that says pandemic update, preparing for the fall of 2020. Is that correct? Abby, Kay, Jim, and I would like to share with you tonight the work that we've been doing behind the scenes to prepare for what the fall of 2020 could look like in the Eau Claire School District. And as we look at our strategic plan, there really is not an area that this doesn't address. You know, we really are on the task force looking at the academic achievement of students as well as the social and emotional health of students. We're really working together to see what we can do to serve students in the situation that we're in or how this situation may evolve. And it does take high quality staff to be flexible and adaptable in a pandemic situation and still be able to put students first. And of course, one of our biggest questions is what's sustainable for our parents and for our families and the community. So Dr. Hardebeck talked a little bit about the Reopening of Schools Task Force. This task force really has two purposes. First, just to identify the topics and issues associated with the reopening of schools following state guidelines. And then second, to develop recommendations to address the identified issues so that schools can open when possible. So what we are trying to do in the last probably 8 to 10 weeks, a lot of what we've been doing is learning day to day. Here's what we need today to get students ready to learn tomorrow. We really want to be able to look ahead a little bit. And so this task force is projecting into the fall and trying to identify some issues that may pop up as we look to reopen school. The membership on the task force includes administration, principals, representatives from teaching and learning. We have buildings and grounds staff there. Student transit is around the table, along with student services. And it should actually say pre-K, elementary, middle, and high school representatives have been asked to join our team. Some of the considerations when we look at the reopening of school is really what are either the recommendations or the requirements for social distancing? What are the current or could be the limits on the size of the gatherings that are allowed? What cleaning and disinfecting protocols do we need to have in place? What are the recommendations for people with pre-existing conditions? That includes both students and staff members. And what are the recommendations for people over certain ages related to this pandemic? These are some of the things that the committee is considering, and we really need to consider it in multiple settings. As Dr. Hardebeck talked, we really have probably 3 options for the reopening of schools. The first option could be 100% face-to-face. We go back to school in September as if this spring didn't really happen and we don't have any restrictions on space or the limits of gathering, or we don't have to worry about illnesses among students and staff. Another option is to continue where we're at right now, which is 100% virtual. And then a third option is a hybrid option, and that could really be a multitude of things that we really haven't defined yet. So as an example, do we do a day A and a day B? If the limitation on the number of people that can gather limits us from having all students in the building, one option is to alternate. Another option could be, AM and PM programming. It could vary by age of student. So we haven't defined those at all yet, but we know that a hybrid could be an option. So as we begin to explore what would we need to have in place in each of these situations, the task force has identified some issues that we will need to address. So we don't have the answers necessarily to these issues. We just know that they are issues that we'll need to address. So as an example, and Jim and I will kind of tag team here. I'll talk, Jim, about the operational ones if you want to talk about the instructional and teaching and learning ones. So as an example, if we're 100% face-to-face, you've probably heard lots of times our new normal. So what will be the new normal as far as the establishment of cleaning protocols and disinfecting? What will that need to be, and what will that be on the impact of our cleaning inventory as well as our staff that help us with that? Also, what are the plans for staff and students that have pre-existing conditions? So if all of us could be back at school, except for those that had pre-existing conditions, what options are we going to put in place for those staff and students? Jim, do you want to talk about the other two?
Yep. So when we transition back to school, the greatest concern our staff has is not academics, but the social emotional learning of our staff, really developing that soft landing and to reintegrate our students back into our schools. By the time our students come back, it'll be nearly 6 months, half of a year before they will have been part of organized schooling as we have known it up until March 16th. And so we've had lots of discussions about what that transition will look like to support our students. Likewise, on the curricular end, we have learned through this that online learning over the last few months is not as efficient as face-to-face learning. And so we recognize that there are gaps, and there are several research articles out. NWEA is one example that talks about not just the summer gap, but the COVID gap. And so we recognize that there are going to be learning gaps for when our students come back with us, assuming it's face-to-face. We know that there's going to be a different challenge on the next two slides next two panels that we get to. So those have been some things, and we'll address that again later about some of the things we're looking at. But to give you an idea on that, we're already hearing from some of the publishers of our key materials, such as Math Expressions, already telling our staff about how to address those gaps and some strategies for dealing with that. But we know that it's bigger than Math Expressions. We have lots of content areas to be addressed.
Thanks, Jim. Another option is that we could, in the fall, begin again with 100% virtual instruction. So it would be really a continuation of what we would be doing right now. One of our biggest issues or things that we want to problem solve around is sustainability for families. So how do we really create, a system or a situation where families feel like they can be successful in a 100% virtual environment? And then again, there are also some teaching and learning topics, Jim, that I'm sure you'd like to talk about.
Yep. So in addition, we have the same concerns, and I won't necessarily go in the same order here that's on the slide. Again, social emotional learning would be our greatest concern. We know that families are stressed right now, trying to be the primary supporter of learning in the home. So we do have to figure out how to balance the SEL needs if we do continue virtual. We also, because if we think about this, we tend to have that gap of from face-to-face learning, in-person learning, to the summer where they're back with their families, then back to back in our brick and mortar schools. Those transitions that they're used to won't be taking place. And so that will require some adjustment and support for our families. We also know that we have some technological needs. You received a memo on this as well, and heard from us back in the board report on April 20th about looking at the needs that we have to support students in a way that's reliable and predictable. Right now, our team is really putting things together and really stretching our resources to the limit. And so looking to have a more reliable, predictable technological foundation would be something that we would like to have in place if we were in that scenario. We also have to do some things about essential standards and course expectations. As I mentioned before, it is extremely inefficient in terms of instruction and learning for our students in a virtual environment. And so just like we did back in early April, we would have to reevaluate with our staff and look at what are the most critical things to accomplish in the amount of time that we think that we will be in a 100% virtual environment. We also, on instructional methods, we've learned a lot, but we also have learned a lot in somewhat isolation. Our staff are collaborating quite a bit using Microsoft Teams, but we also know that we need to provide some opportunities in a structured setting so that they can learn even more from each other. We've come quite a long way in 2 months, and so we do not want things that one staff member has learned to be just kept with that staff member. We want to provide opportunities for them to share with one another. And then sustainability for families is really how do we create those supports for families to take that pressure off of them in terms of instruction.
And so, believe it or not, when the group first started meeting, 100% face-to-face and 100% virtual, for both of those, we felt like we had a running start on tackling the issues or the problem solving around what will we need to do in each of those situations. Then the next situation is hybrid, and like I said before, that's really not defined, but we know whatever system is developed, whatever hybrid looks like, there are certain things that we'll need to tackle. And so within those, again, we're really looking at a lot of many similar items that we had before, but included in a hybrid would be what's the requirement for social distancing, and what does that look like in the classroom? So as an example, Holly Kitchell has used some of her software to show what it would look like to have desks 6 feet apart in a classroom, and how many children could we serve at one time. She has also helped us understand what that would look like in places like the cafeteria. So if social distancing continues to be a recommendation, one of the things we need to think about is the physical layout of the building and how we serve students within the recommendations for social distancing in our facilities. Also, the establishment of cleaning protocols. Dr. Hardebeck mentioned that our buildings and grounds crew cleaned and disinfected 1.9 million square feet, and we did that this spring over several weeks. If we have students in our buildings every day and we're still in a situation where we need to clean and disinfect to prevent the spread of disease, we need to figure out some protocols in order to do that every time new children enter the building. So if there's a group of children today that is different than a group of children next week, we need to make sure the 1.9 million square feet become disinfected again. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about from an operational standpoint. Transportation is another thing. What does social distancing look like on a school bus? And what does that mean as far as the bus routes and the start times and that sort of thing? All of those things need to really be thought through, as well as the instructional and curricular needs that Jim's going to talk about.
And really the same things that we saw in the 2 panels with 100% face-to-face and 100% virtual. I feel like the last panel almost should say 100% and. It's going to be both. And so all the issues that we were trying to address if we would come together face-to-face, and all the issues we'd be trying to address 100% virtual would have to be addressed in the hybrid model, because you'd be looking at times when we would be virtual, and you'd be looking at times when we would be in person. And so all of those things would have to get meshed together. And so depending on the scheduling, we really would have to look at a combination of what would be ideal in terms of scheduling for learning, but also in terms of safety, in terms of cleanliness, and making sure that the facilities are clean from infection, for our potential infection for our students. And so we would have to really have a lot of conversation to strike that balance. Because we would maybe have to look at what would learning look like if you were 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off, and have cleaning in between, versus maybe an every other day type of a model. So we would have to look at variety of models and look at pros and cons in each of those, and try to make sure that we both took care of everyone in terms of their physical safety as well as their social, emotional, and academic health.
And so before we transition to some of the work that Kay has done with this, one of the things I want to share is kind of where we're getting our information and our guidance. We have many resources that have been available to us, including information from the CDC regarding reopening of schools, recommendations from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, as well as our local recommendations for social distancing and that sort of thing. So we're really kind of taking all of that information and all of those resources and trying to apply it in each of these three scenarios. So as Kay hears these scenarios, she also has had to do some digging around the human resources department. So Kay is going to talk next about staffing considerations.
Thanks, Kim. So the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, certainly comes into play with staffing and the considerations that we're under with the situation that Kim and Jim just got done describing with the 3 different panels of 100% face-to-face, 100% virtual, and then the hybrid model. I can tell you that this was a time when I've never worked more collaboratively with my colleagues around our conference and around the state regarding how their area, their conference, their part of the region or the state or their district is looking to staff for the fall of 2020 and the what ifs. So there has been so much collaboration in the HR world related to not only what we're doing now and how we're handling things now, but what are you doing moving forward? And how are you planning for the what ifs? So it's been great for us to try to figure out and learn from one another, what's working in one another's districts, what one another's plans are. And obviously you've heard from Kim all about the task force. So we're taking things step by step until there's a recommendation from the task force about what it is that we're going to be doing for the fall of 2020. But what I can share with you is what I've picked up from our neighboring districts and districts throughout the state about what they're looking at for the fall of 2020. So you can see on the screen that some districts are just going full force ahead. We're planning to be here. We're going face to face 100%. We're staffing as normal. So there are some districts that are doing that. Others are holding on replacing any new positions, regardless of the area that that position is in or the employee group that it's coming from. So anything that's new, they're holding off on that and they're not replacing anything new. Some are reopening the retirement window for certified staff. So it's not opening the retirement window for people who aren't eligible for retirement, but if you've got employees who could have retired at the end of this year but chose not to, they might be having second thoughts about that, knowing that having lived through what we're currently living through and the anticipation that might continue into next year, there might be some certified staff members who, had they known all of that, when they needed to submit their retirement notice as of February 1 of 2020, they might have submitted that. And so there's some districts who are opening that window up and saying, yep, anybody who wants to retire, you have the opportunity to go ahead and do that. Other districts are considering transfers of duly certified teachers from one area to another. And those would be teachers who might be currently working in an area that may be more overly populated than another, and looking to move them into that underpopulated area. So for example, our district has purposely planned now, and we've heard this multiple times, planned in teams and delivered instruction in teams, anticipating that if a team member actually wound up getting sick, that the remaining team members could take over for that person. So say a third grade team all planned together in the event that somebody would get sick. So some of these districts, what they're considering is if that third grade team member was also duly certified as a special ed teacher, that moving forward, maybe that duly certified third grade teacher may be moved into special ed for a portion of the year, and allowing that third grade team to plan and support the third grade students, where that other certified staff member could then move into special ed for a portion of the year to help out with our special ed students when we're in a virtual environment, because the work is so different when students are not with us in-house, and the support programs for them look so different. So some districts are looking at doing that. Some are just laying off all hourly support positions, because if you're in 100% virtual, the programmatic plan again is very different. And then many are just holding on hiring any coaching, advising, and club incremented positions, not knowing whether or not we will be back in the fall to actually have some face-to-face contact with students. So those are some of the ideas that I've heard about related to, again, neighboring districts and what people have already committed to in their areas. And again, we're working through our task force to see where things are going to end up, but there are a lot of things that are already out there and taking place. So once we have that recommendation, we won't be starting from scratch. Thanks, Kim.
So the slide that follows the one that you see in front of you is going to be talking about supporting our students. And Kay just got done talking about all the staffing considerations. But before we support students, we know that students do not walk into schools without adults, or both virtual and in person, highly qualified adults who make the magic happen every day. And one of the things we learned very quickly, or we've learned for a long time, I should say, but that we utilized very quickly in the process of going to at-home learning, was really getting the input from our staff. And when we had to decide on at-home learning checklists at the April 13th Professional Development and Instructional Planning Day, we tapped into our staff right away and had a lot of collaborative conversations about what that environment would look like. And likewise, as we look to next year, we're using the same strategy for the next Professional Development and Instructional Planning Day. We're going to start that day off on Friday with a real short kickoff from each principal with their staff. But then we're going to follow that with an opportunity for our staff to engage in social emotional learning, a Canvas course for them to work through both independently and to have some reflection time independently and some collaborative time with a colleague or a number of colleagues of their choosing, to really look at some of the issues that are confronting our staff and our students at this time. We know that if we do not address the social emotional learning of our staff, it'll be a challenge for them to support the social emotional learning of our students. And so after that experience in the morning, they will move on then into their planning teams, same teams that they worked with back in April. And they will go through this protocol that you see in front of you. And I'll walk you through it a little bit. I'm not expecting you to see the faint writing that in small font that's in front of you. But Becky Graff in our office put this together with her team. And the design is really a 7-step process to allow for both reflection and then to help us point forward. And so the first part begins with a check-in of what we've learned. The second part really starts to build off of that course that they will have taken and really look at the social emotional learning needs of their students in the fall and how do we support our staff in that transition. The third step in this is looking at the student academic needs. What do they learn and what gaps exist? And we talked about that a little bit on the slides earlier with the 3 panels. And our fourth step then, and I should state that each of these steps that they go through, they will be documenting this so that we will be able to actually collect the data so that we can see the input from our staff, which since we aren't able to be in each of those discussions. The fourth step is really looking at assessment and what assessments will help us determine the baseline of where our students are at. And some of the things we're seeing already from some of those that help us provide materials is to really avoid any significant number of assessments early on. It sends the wrong message to our students. But we do have to look for what sort of indicators and metrics might already exist that could help us understand how to support our students. And some of that may be direct measurement, and some of that may be some inferencing from past measurement. The fifth step is really looking at the curriculum and what is our plan for ensuring a coordinated curriculum across the district and within grade levels and courses. And when we looked at in difficult times, one of the things that you can always find some positives that come out of those times. And we saw some very quick alignment that we struggled to have between some buildings or levels that came about during those April discussions. And so I think our staff is really recognizing from an equity standpoint how important it is to have a coordinated curriculum, allowing for flexibility in how to get there, but really making sure that the outcomes that students have are not dependent upon their street address. How they get there, again, that's that flexibility, which would be the 6th step, is what sort of instruction did we learn during this closure that can inform us in the fall, and if we do have to close again or do a hybrid, as Kim was pointing out on our earlier slides. And finally, the last step, the seventh step, is really what are our professional needs for the fall, professional development needs? How should it be delivered? How can teams collaborate toward improvement? And what are really the top priorities? And we are going to take the data that our staff give us and design the supports for them moving forward, and knowing that we have to be prepared for one of those three panels. The data that the way that our staff inform us this Friday, and other days as well, but Friday is going to be a really big data collection day for us. Will really help chart our path forward to supporting our students, which leads into the next slide.
One of the things that the board has heard questions about is how are we supporting students in transition, especially the students that are impacted next year by boundary changes. And we're really taking the social emotional health of our students at this time seriously, whether they're impacted by boundary changes or not, but especially those that have been impacted by boundary changes. The principals and staff have really been working to reach out to those families and try to replicate the transition supports that we had in place prior to COVID, trying to replicate those in a virtual environment. So we wanted to take some time tonight to share what can happen in a virtual environment to support the social and emotional health of students. And so Laura Schlichting from Locust Lane is here, and Ben Dahlman from Roosevelt is here. And they're just going to share a little bit of the work that they've been doing in relation to SEL for students.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be here with you this evening, and I'll just kind of share briefly some of the things that we've done at Locust Lane to welcome our new families to school. Our communication with families really began almost a year ago. We received a list of the families who would be coming to Locust Lane, and so I reached out and made a phone contact with all of them during the summer and fall of 2019. And then through fall and winter, we extended invitations to all of our school events, and we did have families who were able to come and join us. And so we were really excited to do some meetings at that time. Beginning right after spring break, we've also included our weekly newsletters being sent to all of our new families. So they have been receiving that now for several weeks. Our closure, of course, changed a lot of the plans that we had for this spring, but we met as a group of schools welcoming students to come up with what could we do differently as we look to the end of this school year and the start of next. And so what we did is determine that we would provide virtual meetings with families. Last week, Locust Lane had their meetings on Tuesday evening. We met with families and we were able to answer questions and kind of get to know some names. And then on Friday, we had a series of meetings, one with each grade level where students could come on and get to know their teachers for next year. And we found out they have pets and what they enjoy doing, and they got to learn a little bit about us as well. I know that we did our meetings last week, and there are meetings happening this week in other schools and following the following week also. We're also putting together a virtual tour with some staff greetings, and that we'll be able to share that with families within the next week. Information will be shared all summer long, and we'll be encouraging those new students to join us for summer school, another opportunity to get to know staff and build connections and the relationships that we know are so important. And hopefully, we'll be able to plan some kind of a face-to-face welcome before we start school in the fall. I met with our PTO last week, and we shared some thoughts and ideas. And of course, considering the parameters that are in place for us in the fall will determine what we can do. But certainly throughout this entire process, we've shared contact information for our counselor, our partnership coordinator, and for me, so that we can continue that communication throughout the summer for whatever comes up and needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Ben is also with us tonight to talk about what supporting students has looked like at Roosevelt.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. I've been trying to get my camera to work, but that's okay. So, so to start with, to celebrate and say goodbye to our students, everything starts with relationships, and so we know the transition will be a challenging one, not only for our students who are attending another school next fall, but also our students who are staying at Roosevelt but have close friends moving away from them. We also worked really close as staff, just knowing that families might have a higher level of anxiety coming to parent-teacher conferences or other times during the school year. And so it was really important for us to make sure we help our kids and their families build connections between our school and Sam Davy, which is the school that our students are going to. Along with that, just the communication between the schools, as Principal Schlichting had mentioned, and then the planning between our schools. We had a lot of different things planned that we adjusted given our closure, such as an open house, lunch with the principal and counselor, summer school. So in response to our school closure, we needed to adapt. And relationships still continue to come first because it would be hard to recognize and celebrate our students with any type of sincerity without maintaining that as our foundation. And so we've really been working hard to make sure we're connecting with every family to the best of our ability. Teachers and other staff members are continually checking in and providing as much social emotional support. Our communication between schools has been virtual communications, but there's been communication between teachers and school counselors just to learn more about our outgoing and incoming kids. And then also sometimes including family members, depending on the support that the child needs. And then also, along with that, we've been revising our plans between our schools. And so instead of having an on-site orientation night with school tours, we've tried to simulate that with a welcome video message, virtual tour, a slideshow. And instead of having an in-person moving up day where our students visit the next classroom teachers with their classmates, that they're going to be attending the next year, we're planning to parallel this the best that we can with Sam Davy. So all students are experiencing a virtual moving up day. And then we're also bringing our students from Lakeshore into our own. And that will be happening in early June. And then also, instead of attending summer school in person, we're providing that option through our at-home learning format for our summer school program. And so finally, to help recognize and celebrate our students who are not returning to our school this fall, there's a number of things that we are having in the works. We have personalized gifts for students who are not returning. So gift bags, handwritten letters, yard signs that we'll be dropping off for families from a safe distance. A recognition video slideshow for all of our 5th grade families. Where we won't list student names, but we'll at least have a collage of pictures over the years, some dating all the way back to kindergarten. We have a video montage from staff for all Roosevelt families. And the idea came during Teacher Appreciation Week. We really want to thank our families for their amazing support during these past 9 weeks because we have leaned on them like we've never have before. And we also want to wish our students the best, especially those not returning to Roosevelt this fall. We are planning a Roosevelt staff and teacher parade. So I've received guidance from the Eau Claire County Health Department to ensure a healthy and safe parade for everyone. So on the afternoon of June 5th, which will be our last day for students, we are planning a safe and socially distanced Roosevelt staff and teacher parade. And if anyone has any questions about those guidelines, I'd be happy to share them. And then finally, to help recognize and celebrate our Roosevelt students who will be attending another school next fall, we are planning a playground gathering for all current and incoming Roosevelt students this August if safely possible. And if not possible this August, we will do our best to schedule this before students are physically in our school building for the new school year. We do have some families who currently attend Roosevelt, but in the fall would actually, like to have their closure in the June, and so they may choose not to attend in August to have that closure. But then we also have families who would like to come back and say goodbye to their classmates, teachers, and other staff members before beginning the next school year at another school. And so all will be invited, but we hope to know more about when and how we can safely gather as August approaches. So those are just a few things that our staff have been working hard to help support kids and recognize them on their way.
Thank you, Ben. So as Ben and Laura shared, we are working hard to support students in a 100% virtual environment. And just as a review, the task force is also looking at what would happen if we were face-to-face in the fall, or what issues would we need to resolve if we were in a hybrid situation. And when we say each of those three situations, one of the things that really needs to be considered in those situations is the budget. And Abby's going to talk about that.
Thank you, Kim. So a couple of things first we wanted to share, and we did talk about this with budget development last week. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about was the unanticipated cost reductions that we had that we expect to anticipate our fund balance due to the school closure. So for the 1920 year, we do expect to have some unexpected cost reductions that land in our fund balance due to salary and benefits. Obviously, we've had some positions that have been unfilled, and we were unable to fill them during this unexpected mandatory school closure. When we look at the contracted services area, our transportation costs have been reduced based upon the fact that students are learning from home instead of in our school buildings. Our substitutes have also been impacted as well because, as Kay mentioned earlier, the teachers are teaching in teams, so that if one person were to become ill, the others would kind of take on that instruction for the student. And so that has reduced the need for the daily substitutes that we've had. Obviously, some supplies that would have been needed in the spring have not been needed because we haven't had face-to-face instruction. In addition, we had some equipment purchases that we had intended to make, and due to either shipping restrictions or the fact that the plants and the places we would order them from, the manufacturers, their businesses were closed down as well. And so some of those things will be back in the budget for the 2021 year because we weren't able to get them and use them with students in the 1920 year. Obviously, some other cost reductions that were unexpected related to the dues and fees area. Many of them come in the co-curricular activities that happen during that fourth quarter sports. There's a lot of competitions that happen that have entry fees and things like that. And so we are expecting some cost savings in that area as well, just due to the fact that we know that co-curricular events did not happen at all this spring. We don't know what the exact benefit's going to be yet to the fund balance, and we don't expect to have that information until probably mid to late August, but we wanted to bring that out and kind of have that on the board's mind, knowing that there is a very good chance that there will be some of these things impacting our fund balance as we close out the 1920 fiscal year. Then we can move into talking about the next budget year, which is a little bit challenging for us because we thought we knew what was going to happen and we had a plan, but there's lots of discussions that's happening in the legislature and with the Joint Finance Committee. And so tonight, I'd like to share with you 3 potential scenarios that we have been considering as an administrative team in the district. So scenario number 1 is what the current law is. And so we are in year 2 of the biennium budget, and we were anticipating an additional $179 per pupil in our revenue limit calculation, and that's based upon the current law. Because of that amount, we were anticipating about $2 million additional in that revenue limit, assuming that our membership average stayed the same. In scenario 2 that I'm going to show you, we predict a 0 per pupil increase, and we would use the same dollar amount that we had for the 2019-2020 budget. Again, that's one of the items that's being discussed in the Joint Finance Committee, and so we wanted to bring that to the school board's attention as well, just to know that it's being talked about. And what would that mean for the Eau Claire School District if the legislature moves forward with that potential suggestion? And then the third item that we've been talking about is a reduction of $200 per pupil. We've heard a lot of different amounts thrown out about a reduction in the per pupil amount. And one of the ones that we've heard is $200 per pupil. And so we wanted to share what impact that would have on the Eau Claire School District budget. Again, these changes are being discussed daily. At this point in time, we do not believe that number 1 will happen just because of how the economy has been impacted related to this pandemic that's been going on in our state. In an ideal world, it would happen. And so we just wanted to be able to show the board and the community what those differences are and how that would impact our current budget planning since we are in the phases of it now. So commitments, before we get into the numbers for sure, just a reminder of things that the board has already been acted upon for the 2021 school year. So you will remember that the board has approved salary increases in the amount of $1.8 million for the 2021 school year. In addition to that, there was a CPI increase approved in the amount of $387,000. And the last big change in the salary and benefits area relates to the health insurance increase, and that is $1.9 million. When you add those three items together, it's just over $4.2 million that the board has committed to for the 2021 school year. And keeping that in mind, that makes sense because 80% of our budget is into that salary and benefits area. So what I've got displayed for you here tonight is the operating funds, and we're really focusing on Fund 10 and 27. And so I wanted to show you in the 1920 school year what our adopted budget was and how that impacts and how that compares to the rest of the scenarios that we're looking at tonight. So if you remember when we adopted the budget this year, we have anticipated about $163 million of revenue and about $163 million in expense. And so we adopted a positive budget this year with expecting a surplus of $110,146. Now, some things that we know are going to be different in the options that are being presented tonight. Again, option one is what the current law says, and that's that $179 more per pupil. The other thing that we know about that we are anticipating additional information on in the upcoming weeks is the CARES Act that Commissioner Nordin mentioned tonight in his president's report of what's going on with the legislators. We believe that amount is about just over $1.9 million for the Eau Claire School District. So you can see I separated that out into each option because that is some additional funding that we are expecting to receive in the next school year. So under option one, with the additional $179 per pupil and the CARES money, we're projecting our revenues to be just over $169 million. When we look at our expenses, and I just did them very broad categories because we're in that budget building stage so far. Under salary and benefits, I included the items that the board had already approved, and that's where the $117 million comes in. And then the other expenses, I projected about a 2% increase on average for our purposes to look at numbers tonight. That will bring our total expenses to about $167.7 million, which would provide an addition of $1.2 million. And so again, we would have a balanced budget, assuming that we were to get that $179 per pupil. If we look at option two, which you'll remember is flat, and we don't get any additional dollars from the state aid like we were anticipating, that brings our total revenue to about $1.7 million. You can see some changes in state, and that's mostly just due to our students and the fact that our membership count is going up. And you can also see there's some impact to our property tax revenue as well. And then when we go to the expense side of things, again, salary and benefits and the other expenses are about the same. The other expenses category is due to a difference in the special education categorical aid. In the biennium budget that was expected to increase to a 30% reimbursement. And again, taking a conservative approach, I reduced that to 27% just to see how that would impact our bottom line. And so as you can see, if that was to happen and the legislature took that into effect, we would be looking at about a $1.4 million deficit with option two. And then if we move into option three, the revenue goes down even more because we're taking away additional dollars per pupil. And you think about $200 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but when you start with 11,300 students, that does have a significant impact to your bottom line in the effect of about $2.5 million. And what you can see then is on the expense side, I left it the same as in option 2 with a lower special ed categorical aid reimbursement. That creates a deficit of about $3.7 million. So some big impacts. We don't know where it's going to go. We're still in the process of building our budget, but we wanted to share how does that look like for the Eau Claire School District if the legislature does go ahead and approve one of these changes for us. We continue to monitor, just kind of like we're continuing to monitor what's going to happen this fall. And all of these different options will impact our budget. And so I guess we're going to be conservative as we build our budget, and we'll work with budget development as well. But all I can really say about the budget right now is stay tuned, because every day we hear something different and learn a little bit more. So some big things coming our way.
And with that, we are ready for any questions, comments, or discussion.
Thank you, executive team, and Principal Dahlman, Principal Schlichting, for your participation on that as well, letting us know what's going on. Comments and questions from board members?
Do you have a kind of a target date for termination of face-to-face, online, or hybrid?
I can begin to answer that, and then Jim, if you want to chime in as well. We asked that question as we've started to identify issues or questions that we'll have in each scenario. One of the things that we've needed, or that we've asked, is by what date would you need to know in order to effectively problem solve by the start of the year? And some of those items have been, fairly quick to turn around. So as an example, to rearrange furniture that promotes social distancing, we could probably do that in a week or two. Other items, we probably need a little bit more time to adjust to that. So Jim, one of those items, I believe, was technology. Another one is identifying the essential learning. So did you want to speak
Right.
to either of those?
Right. So then the technology end, really, we need to know by July 1. If we think about just the ordering process. So if we knew by July 1 that we were able to add more devices, the bidding process, getting the specs, because the specs continue to change because products continue to evolve. And then getting the bid process, getting the order, getting the ship. Once they're in, they just don't get handed out. We have to process them, barcode, image, get them all inventoried. And that's a solid 2 months typically from the beginning to the end. And that's if everything goes well. In terms of the essential learning, well, we did this under rapid fire last time, not ideal. It would be nice to have a better understanding of what the future would be. I don't anticipate we will have that clarity by the time we leave the staff's last day on June 8th. We know that we have our staff coming back on August 24th, our certified staff, to be able to do that work as well. We had plans for that if we were face-to-face, and we would have to retool those plans. And if we had some clarity a little earlier, we'd be able to work with some of our initial leaders to get some of that beginning work done, and we would be able to do some of that over the summertime. But really, the level of efficiency would be difficult to maintain during the summer months. One advantage we had this last year, or this last spring, was the fact that our staff at least were still working, and we could access them and get their input and have them help us build the model. So we know that there's going to be that gap from June 8th, or after June 8th until April 24th. And we will have access to some people, but it's much more limited and challenging.
So Jim, I just want to clarify. I think you said April 24th, but it's actually August 24th, right?
Thank you. Sorry, August 24th. Yes, I'm mixing. April was very significant moment in my head, obviously. Still stuck on the April 13th event. But yes, August 24th. Thank you.
Commissioner Harder?
Thanks for this report. And I know there's so much that's up in the air and so many unknowns. I'm looking at the last slide, the budget projections. Just a couple questions about that. I assume, just if you can confirm, these are numbers based essentially on this year's budget, right? Sort of pre-coronavirus planning of what things are going to cost on this
Yes.
slide. Is that, yeah?
That is correct.
Okay, and that makes sense. And then I'm wondering how much we've been able to develop across the three different scenarios that we're looking at, the difference in costs for a socially distanced full face-to-face versus a full virtual versus the hybrid that we've talked about in terms of projecting. I know you talked a little bit about some of the differences in costs that we've already are seeing. Have we looked into those three different scenarios and tried to project around those what those differences might look like?
We are actually working on that. And so when Kim talked about the task force, there's many different departments and people involved in that. And so we're gathering that information, but we don't have any solid numbers that I'm comfortable sharing yet.
Understood. Yeah, just checking. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Dr. Bika, Dr. Torres, Commissioner Clements? Dr. Torres?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, it's not a question. I guess it's I'd like to express my resistance to believe that an option 3 could happen. I'm just wondering, Abby, if your model, your projected model, can introduce some spaces between option 1 and option 2 and see when we're even. Next time you do the exercise. I mean, we might not get additional 179, but maybe 50. What would that mean? If it were not too complicated, I guess you can insert a couple of columns there and see where we would break even. Just to have some language to advocate with our representatives and put some pressure. That's my commentary.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. And I think that is a really great suggestion, and we can definitely, add that going forward just to help with that, to be able to share with our legislatures and get them the information of what does that mean to the Eau Claire School District.
Dr. Torres, I'll say that I also look at option 3 with a level of horror, if you will. But I know that just from my appointment last year as the legislative liaison, I know that some members of the legislature have suggested potentially reverting back to the final year of Governor Walker's budget as opposed to Governor Evers as a, I guess, austerity measure based on the economics. So Abby, of course, thank you for your team's work in sort of saying, well, this would be awful and we hopefully will not be doing that, but because it's being floated, we better be on our feet so that we can be prepared if it happens. So we are at the mercy in some sense of our legislature for how they decide to allocate dollars to public funds. And I didn't have the opportunity, I guess, in my legislative update to say to people, hey, contact your legislators and let them know that we need the money that we're planning on so that we can continue to educate students. This is a more challenging time, and we realize that everyone is feeling a challenge across the state economically, but committing to public schools is always a good investment in our future. Dr. Bika, Commissioner Clements, any comments or questions from you?
This is Josh. I'm looking forward to kind of what the cost scenarios are, because those things are not really entirely within our control, but I guess we may have more options there, whereas the revenue, we're kind of in the receiving end of things. So looking forward to seeing, or relatively not looking forward to seeing what those scenarios look like.
Thank you.
I have one more question on the classroom density. I'm guessing that what that would mean is fewer students in a classroom, and I'm wondering if we have the facilities, if we need to add sections and head count. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So that's a good question. The very short answer is if we cannot have every student in a classroom that we're planning to have in a classroom. In other words, if I have 27 fourth graders and the limits on gathering is below 10, that means I can have 9 children and a teacher in a classroom. So that if that classroom, or if that class were then to become face-to-face, it would take up 3 classrooms, right? 3 sections of 9 children each. And so what essentially that would mean is no, in a school, we do not have, we use more than 1/3 of our spaces currently. So if we need to spread them out across multiple classrooms, and it's the same number of children, we would not be able to serve all children face-to-face. So that is one of the one of the challenges in a hybrid situation is how do we determine who is face-to-face and when they're face-to-face, and what does virtual look like, when you're not, if you're face-to-face sometime and virtual other times, what does that balance look like? So those are things that the task force is asking itself. And right now we're really at the stage of, we know to ask the question, but we don't necessarily have the answer.
Okay, thank you, Kim and Jim and Kay and Abby once again. We look forward to hearing more about all of the work that you're doing and the ways that you're preparing to take our students forward in concert with our staff. We're very appreciative of everything that you're doing. I know I say that, I think, on every item at this point, but I hope that the genuine feeling of gratitude comes through every time, because we are really thankful for the work that you're doing. We have one additional item on our agenda for tonight, that is the referendum survey feedback in a work session. Given that it is 9:52, I'm going to pose 2 questions. One, I think, to Dr. Hardebeck, who knows the timeline for our potential referendum as well as anyone, and then one to my colleagues on the board. Dr. Hardebeck, I wonder if we have maybe some flexibility that we could potentially push this back and put it on the agenda for next time. And then, of course, if that were the case, then if my board colleagues would consider tabling this for the next meeting.
Yes, that is certainly possible to put it on the next. You'll still be within your timeline.
Okay, thank you. So then I would put to my colleagues to ask if it's if any of you would consider tabling this for next time, just given the hour.
I'd be amenable to that.
I'm good either way.
I think you need a motion, right?
Yeah, we would need a motion to table and a second if that were the case.
Would move to table it.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Harder. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, second by Dr. Bika. All those in favor of tabling agenda item 10.1, referendum survey feedback for our next meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Right, motion carries. We'll add this to the agenda for our June meeting. That brings us to item 11.1, request for future agenda items. And hearing none, it is 9:55 p.m. I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Torres, perhaps his last motion as a board member in our public meeting. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your extra time tonight. I think we got a lot of good updates and work done. Agenda setting will be tomorrow at 8 a.m. And we will see you all later. Thanks for coming.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.